Hey everybody, Michael Davis here, and welcome to Bone2Pick. We're coming to you today from Penn State University, State College, Pennsylvania, and super happy to be here this weekend for the 31st annual Fruhling Posaunen Festival. And along with the great Bill Reichenbach and Peter Steiner, we're here with our host, the great Mark Lusk. And we're going to sit down today for a nice chat with Mark about the program here at Penn State University, as well as his extraordinary career as a performer. Mark joined the faculty here at Penn State in 1986. Started off as somewhat of a modest program, but he's built it into one of the premier low brass departments anywhere in the country. His students have assumed prominent roles in all aspects of the music industry and music education. In addition to being one of the preeminent low brass teachers and trombone teachers, he's crafted a very successful career as a performer and soloist. He has recorded and toured extensively with the Woody Herman Band. His performing and teaching have taken him around the world, including some really interesting residencies in Cuba, Chile, and Argentina. He's also performed with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, the Eastman Wind Ensemble, and the Chicago Contemporary Chamber Players. He's worked extensively on Broadway in New York City, also freelanced quite a bit in Chicago. He got his undergraduate and graduate degrees from the Eastman School of Music in Rochester, New York. He also has a performer's certificate from Northwestern University. He is an artist and clinician for the great S.E. Shires Company. And Mark, thanks so much for having us here today, and thanks for sitting down for our 10th anniversary interview here. This is kind of pretty special.
It's pretty awesome. It's awesome to have you here for this event. You've blessed us here at Penn State a number of times through the years. When I first got here, I think you were maybe one of the first people that we brought in, and so it's indeed an honor to be a part of this Bone2Pick.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. That's very, very kind of you. You know, let's dive right into Penn State, because what you've done here is extraordinary. And you just shared with me before we started that this particular class is one of the strongest that you've had in these 35 years that you've been here. Maybe just take us from the start, like starting here in 1986, and how you've gone about building this very distinguished program.
Well, sure. I think when we were in school together, we talked about all the different things that we might do, but I think you knew, my friends knew, my colleagues knew that I was pretty attracted to the idea of having a career in teaching at a university level. I had seen people like Vinnie DiMartino and of course the legendary Emory Remington and all the different people who had chosen that kind of path, that had managed to have a career teaching at the university, but the university gave them the luxury of being able to go out and play and do kind of what they wanted to do. So I was in Chicago at the time. Things were going well. I was rolling along at Northwestern, and this job opened up. And it wasn't a lot to it at that time. It was trombone and tuba and euphonium. But there was something about it. Talking 1986, almost anywhere you went, Penn State was on people's radar. I mean, you could say the name Penn State and almost everybody would know about it. Sure. And so I thought to myself, well, if you go there and you get something happening, the place kind of sell itself, especially in Pennsylvania. You have everything from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh to Harrisburgs and Eries and the suburbs and the country and, over every mountain, kind of thing. There's probably somebody. And so it just seemed like the potential was really great. Mm-hmm. And so I came here, and sure enough, my first semester, I think there were 4. Started out with 5 low brass majors, I think. And then soon there were 4 low brass majors, because one of them probably shouldn't have been here at that point. So, but 5 years into it, I had close to 40, a little bit over 40 majors. So it just exploded for me. And, it's been it's been a wonderful place to be. I'm from a small, as we'll talk later, I'm from a small town in Kentucky, and the love of my life. I grew up 12 miles from me, and so I kind of knew that maybe going to New York or being in Chicago or LA or some of those other options probably was going to mean that wasn't going to happen, and I was just a little too infatuated for that, and so Penn State's been a great place to raise the family. You know, we've been able to raise 7 pretty remarkable people here. We had a boy, and then I had 5 girls in a row, and then a baby boy. So, you know, the colleagues have been great. The students have been great.
Do you feel like you mentioned that the school sells itself, which is a bit of an understatement towards you, because you obviously built the program and people come here to study with you, and that's why they're coming here. I'm just curious, like in terms of how you built that recruiting, was that something that you were just kind of naturally figured out, or is that something you went after?
Well, you know, we learned a lot about that at Eastman together. I mean, it was such an amazing collection of people at Eastman, and so I remember I got involved with Phi Mu Alpha at Eastman, and I sort of helped that group double and in size, and so I that's when I sort of began to realize some of the things that were important. But there's a few things that I really do believe about recruiting and building a program on any level, really. I try to sound off on the idea that more important than anything, kids recruit kids.
Okay.
On any level. Like if we've been successful at Penn State because of our trombone choir and because of getting our students out to play for people. Those kids see those other kids playing, you know, I don't know, it lights a fire. Maybe even more so than seeing us play or seeing us do what we do. Kids recruit kids. The people we recruit are the teachers. So that if you can remember when you were a young man and you said, well, you know, this is what I'm going to do, where should I go to school? Well, somebody told you about Dr. Marcellus, or somebody told you about what was going on at Eastman, or
Absolutely,
you know, and so there you went. You know, somebody's on that short list, and so thankfully, I'm on a lot of people's short list when it comes to, hey, maybe you ought to go check out Penn State University. So to me, that's the success in the recruiting. And then once you get somebody here and people, the teachers that they had before, they see the A to B, you know, and they recognize, wow, that's a pretty remarkable thing. Maybe we ought to send some more folks there. So, because it's all about teaching people, really, at the end of the day.
That's a great way to look at it. I never really thought of that, but students recruit students. It makes a lot of sense because that's really what you're going to identify with, especially from an age perspective. We talked about it a little bit before we started the interview, but Mark has done 68 solo recitals here at Penn State, which I'm also sure helps in the recruiting process. But share with us maybe a little bit about how you started that, and you said you just finished your 68th. So
right, yeah. So except for when there was a child being born, or my wife was diagnosed with cancer at one point, and so that kind of I didn't do one then. But every semester I do a recital within the first week of classes. Now that means I have to kind of hit it pretty hard over Christmas, or towards the end of summer or something like that. But it's a simple philosophy, really. I want them to hear me play before I start yapping at them, so that they have some idea of where I'm coming from musically, or sound-wise, or just so they have some sort of an idea. Also, the other advantage, if you do one every semester during that, a senior is going to have heard 6 or 7 of them. So what a freshman hears, their first semester, their freshman year, they're not going to hear the same things that they're going to hear when they're a first semester junior, hopefully. Hopefully they're at a very different place, and so they hear me play, and then, they hopefully see some evidence of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then over the last 15 years or so, they've become kind of big events, that usually ends up being a kind of a 2-day event. We'll have multiple concerts, usually some sort of a jazz or some sort of a non-classical kind of a concert, then one that's a little bit more of a traditional faculty program. We've brought in so many different artists. And again, I think one of the very first ones was called Hit the Ground Running. And that, I think you were a part of that one. I think we did a whole Mike Davis night one night, actually, so if I remember right. So
I'll calm this crowd, don't worry.
So there is some method to that madness.
Yeah.
It's,
That's a great idea, starting the semester with that. And this sets the tone for,
some folks who do what I do, they maybe don't play any recitals, and then some play all the time. But for me, I like to do it right out of the box so that so we start the conversation and right from the get-go.
Very cool. Well, tell us a little bit about Froeling Pozanen now. I'm thrilled to be here. This is the first time I've been involved and to get to work with Bill Reichenbach's always a treat. But the 31st annual, this is pretty impressive. You guys have been
Well, we
going
did
that
30
long.
years in a row until COVID.
Yeah.
And the last time we did it was here. And on that occasion, we had Bonegasm with Jen Wharton and John Fedchock and the others. And then we had Jay Friedman here. But it's a funny story how this got started. I know you're going to appreciate this because it was really Dr. Marcellus's idea. Right about the time I got hired here, Doc had become president of ITA.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And one of his efforts was to move the workshop out of Nashville, because it had always been in Nashville all the time. So he wanted to get it out and about. And so it was the first time, I think it was at Elon College in Britain, and then it was going to come back to Eastman. And so came back to Eastman, and Doc comes to Hal Reynolds and I. And as you all know, Doc's just such an idea guy, right? He's kind of an idea guy. And we were the ones that would try to make those ideas come about. You think about our group that we had, our jazz group that we had at Eastman during our day, that was sort of with Doc's encouragement and that kind of thing. Anyway, he was kind of bummed because dadgummit, that Harvey Phillips, he's got that whole Tuba Christmas thing down. You know what I mean? Like Harvey even had the, I think he has it copyrighted or something like that. Like if you want to do a Tuba Christmas, there's a whole thing you got to go through. So Doc was thinking, we kind of need to do something like that. And so he had it all written out. It was so cute. He had this thing, trombone with a capital T, long cross T, trombone, and the E of trombone was capitalized, and then it was Easter. Trombone Easter. That's what he wanted to do. So Hal and I kind of look at one another, and we kind of our brains kind of run into the same hazard light. And we're going, that's an awesome idea, Doc. But you realize that's the only day most trombone players have a gig all year. The old joke about, can I leave my trombone here for when the Easter comes next year? So, but we began to talk about it, and we began to flesh it out. And certainly Easter is, this season is such an awesome time for music. And so, we started this thing where Eastman would do it one year, Ithaca would do it another year, and we would do it another year. And so on Palm Sunday, for 30 years, we'd hop in our cars and we would drive to wherever it was happening. And each of us would do what we could to make it kind of a special day, a special event. The biggest thing about it, it's so great to have you and Bill and Peter and Constanza here and all that sort of stuff. But the biggest value, year in and year out, we got to hear them play. They got to hear us play. And these are their same age, you know? Because there's a lot of schools where the trombone players might never hear another trombone player their age. So the value of that, and again, back to the recital thing, what a freshman hears at their first Froeling Pozanen versus what a senior or a junior hears at theirs, an entirely different ball game. So COVID knocks us out for a couple of years, and traveling is a lot different. So Eastman and Ithaca are not involved this year, but I invited, I just felt it was important to do it. And because, you know, too much time away, it's kind of gets harder to get started back up. So West Virginia University students and faculty are going to be here. Hakeem Balil and Kevin McManus is bringing up his group from Indiana University of Pennsylvania, IUP they call it, and the University of Delaware with Bruce Tychinski is bringing his crew over. So, and then we'll do a big thing all at the end. That's always a great thing to play something, you know, a big number together. And we all get in our cars and go back home, and it all happens in an afternoon. And hopefully it's something we can do for another 31 years.
Awesome. Yeah, well, kudos to you for keeping it alive and restarting it after COVID. That's great. I know it's hard. Sometimes you let it go a little while and then it's hard to restart. But awesome. We're all looking forward to it. So it should be a great day. Let's talk a little bit about your playing career, and you know, we touched on obviously the recitals that are related to being here at Penn State, but you've had a really successful career playing. I know we worked together in New York when you were doing work there. Maybe we'll talk about a little bit about your time with Woody Herman's band, which is of course one of the great big bands of all time. But maybe share some of your memories of that.
Well, I don't know how I'm sure you felt this similar playing with Buddy's band. I listened to your interview with Bill, and y'all were talking about that a little bit, and you know, just to feel a part of that lineage and to feel part of that. You know, we were so lucky when we were graduating from school, when we were coming out of Eastman. There were kind of a number of different options for us to do that, yeah, I was a fan of Woody's band long before I ever played in it.
Sure.
Of course, there had been a long tradition of great Eastman trombone players in the band, and so I was lucky to do it while Woody was still around. I think just we all play in different bands, and we swing in different things, and we rock and roll in different grooves on different bands, you know, but man, when you play in a band that has that kind of tradition and that kind of feel, I know you got to play in the band a few times too, and it's just it's something that almost feels sort of outer body. Matter of fact, when people ask about what are some of my fondest musical memories, I think probably one of the most still kind of goosebumpy sort of moment for me was when we did the 50th anniversary album in San Francisco at the Great American Music Hall, which was live. And the band never rehearsed, of course, and we had done like 28 days in a row on the way to there. So we'd play the gig, we'd have our Sony Pro Walkmans on our stands, and we would, you know, we'd record ourselves playing the gig, and then we'd get on the bus the next day, and and you'd see everybody crawl onto the bus, and then about 50 miles into it, you see everybody, the headphones go on, and then people would, they'd listen to the gig the night before. And I just never will forget, and you've worked with him too, sitting next to John Fedchuk in that concert. Because it was a live record. It was John's music. John's producing the thing. He's playing the solos, all live. And when you hear that album, I think about 75% of it was within the first 45 minutes. We just started to play, and it just almost felt like we weren't playing. It was just a really fantastic experience.
How about Chicago Symphony? I didn't realize that you had performed with them.
Sure. Well, I right after my master's degree, if you remember, I took Fred Sturm's place to run the jazz program and teach the low brass at Lawrence Conservatory. And again, I knew I wanted to do this someday. And back then, if you were going to teach, and still maybe, back then, if you were going to teach brass, where do you need to go? You probably need to go to Chicago and find out what the heck's going on there. So I got myself into the doctoral program at Northwestern. Had a wonderful assistantship there with Don Owens doing one of the jazz bands. So I went out with Woody's band in between the two. This is 1984. First time I went out with Woody's band. And then started my work at Northwestern. Doctoral students couldn't play in the ensembles. So I took the audition, and I took some other auditions, and luckily I did really, really well. Painter had me solo with the wind ensemble, like in my first few weeks there.
Wow, cool.
Which was pretty crazy. And then I won the civic orchestra job, which meant that technically if you were in the civic orchestra, if was to happen, you were supposed to get a shot at playing with the orchestra. At least that's kind of how it used to be. I don't know what it is now, but well, I get there in September, October, Kleinhammer just says, "Hey, you know what? I'm done." So it's like, talk about being at the right place at the right time. Yeah. So for my whole time there, between Kleinhammer and Charlie getting there was a handful of us that I would do a few weeks or a month or whatever, and another guy would do a few weeks, and that's kind of how it worked. And so whatever was happening in those weeks, whether it was a record or a tour or whatever, so my first concert with them was at Ravinia, and Ravinia was doing their 50th anniversary. And so Kurt Mazur's conducting, right? And on Thursday night, it's Brahms 1 and 2, and on Saturday, it's Brahms 3 and 4. So here I am, I go and I sit down, and here's Jake. Jake was kind of in a flux, a changeover time. He had gotten where he couldn't play all the time, but he was playing, Jake was playing, and Chris Foley was here. Wow. So 95 years of experience on either side of me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you'd go to the concerts, Mike, in Symphony Hall. You've maybe been to them yourself, and you would go and you would hear it, and that sound would be like, right there. And the concert would keep coming, and it would just keep coming, you know what I mean? It was like one of those situations, right? Yeah. And it just got more and more glorious as the concert went on. So I'm sitting down and I'm playing, and the group starts to play, and I'm used to this, right? They start to play, and I don't hear anything. I'm thinking, oh, okay. All right, they're messing with the kid. You know what I'm saying? They're messing with the young guy. Some sort of hazing or something going on here. But no, I quickly realized that the reality is that they were masters of the art of projection. Their sound was gone. They knew what they sounded like in every seat in the place. The same way, you and Bill know exactly what you sound like when it hits that microphone. You know what I mean? They just it's experience. It's wonderful. And so, yeah, it was a pretty crazy opportunity. People ask about that must have been like your most wonderful experience. It was pretty awesome, but tell you, to play with Joe and Steve Witzer that summer in Colorado, that was pretty special.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
So,
for those who don't know, you were in the Colorado
Philharmonic in 1980, which is now it's called the National Rep Orchestra or something like that.
Right.
But we do like 8 weeks, and there were like 2 or 3 concerts a week. The orchestra was full of these young folks just chewing it up and spitting it out. And so I got to be in there with Joe, Joe Alessi, I think, was the summer before he played in Philly for the first time, or somewhere early on, and then the great Steve Witzer, who we all miss dearly every day.
Totally, such a Hopefully he's smiling down on us right now. Like, Mike, I got a couple corrections you missed today. Let me show you what you're doing.
Yeah, he's telling us to play duets.
Well, thanks for sharing the story about Chicago Symphony. What a thrill that must have been, even though Jake was in a kind of a transition. But man, what the history.
Sitting next to him and you hear everybody talk about that attack that he played with. I mean, your bones would rattle. I mean, literally your bones would rattle when he would give you that attack, and you understood why he was always so clear. That he also had developed that art of being just ever so slightly ahead. So that sound was like right there.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Really never on the other side of it. It was always on the front side of it.
Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about some of your work internationally. And I noticed, and I knew we talked about it when you had come back from it, but a couple really interesting residencies and tours, however you would describe them. But maybe share any memories that you jump out at you about the trips that you made to Chile and Cuba and Argentina.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it started with Chile and then went to Argentina, and then there was the Cuba kind of thing was a little bit different. But I had a student, one of my tuba students became the tubist in the theater orchestra in Santiago, Chile.
Okay.
And so he invited me down to Chile and got to solo with the different orchestras. I got to play Spillman's concerto that I love so much, and Ray Premeru asked me to play his tuba concerto, and so I did that and some other things. But it was mainly just about going and seeing the people and teaching and playing for folks. I had the old Vivace before it's smart music. Remember the Vivace, right? So I had a bag and I had some speakers and I had the Vivace thing, and so and also had a CD and things that I could use, and so I would play Sinatra, like those Sinatra things that George Roberts would play. I played those everywhere. As a matter of fact, when I did my last concert in Chile with the National Symphony Orchestra there, my encore was 2 Sinatra tunes.
And probably went over well, actually.
It did. And so I have pictures of me playing in all these little towns, like of course Chile is about as from Alaska to San Diego, right?
Yeah.
So just all these towns up and down through. One of the conductors I played with in Chile was kind enough that when he became assistant director in the Teatro Colón, the famous Teatro Colón in Buenos Aires, he invited me to come solo there, and that was pretty amazing. That hall, lots of performers, Toscanini, Beverly Sills, have said that that's truly one of the greatest halls in the world, and I'm sure when you made your trips to Buenos Aires and
I never got inside it, but I saw it went out
it's
the
like a
outside of it.
national treasure, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And to be the, somebody told me one time after, while we were doing it, that was the first trombone solo in the history of the theater there.
Wow,
so,
cool.
yeah, and that was a pretty great experience. And the great story there is that I was there for 2 weeks, and so the first week I'm like teaching and doing different things, and the orchestra was going to go on a little tour to Cordoba. And the conductor had chosen a number of some Gershwin pieces. So sure enough, the bass trombone player got sick or something, and they said, "Well, can we have Mark play?" So I said, "Sure." So I went and I got on the bus, and and my Spanish is about as good as my English, which ain't so hot. So I'm making my way to Cordoba, right? And everybody's taking care of me. They were just so great. And sure enough, we're playing American in Paris. So I'm sitting back there in the orchestra, and I'm kind of yucking it up with the guys there in the group, right? And all of a sudden, the conductor's talking, and everybody kind of starts looking at me. And I guess in part of his introduction was he was going to say he was changing the name of the tune to American in Cordoba. And he having me stand up as if, I'm the one that's doing it. But of the three that you mentioned, I have to say that some of the most important work I've ever done was in Cuba.
Yeah.
Those people are so special there. I know you've probably, you've been there with your tours, and maybe when it comes to culture, whether it be music or dance or food or whatever, they might be some of the richest people on the planet. Mm-hmm. Seriously, they might be some of the richest people on the planet. When it comes to opportunity, some of the poorest people on the planet. Yeah. So I'm so proud of the work that we did there, or are doing there. Last time we were able to go was literally September 2019 was the last time we went, and we haven't been back. But with the help of friends and musicians, we've managed to take close to $75,000 worth of instruments there to leave. That's awesome. We'd go there, we'd play them, and then when it came time to leave, we'd forget our horns, kind of thing. But it was just very, very special. And next week, I'm at the University of Richmond. We're performing this concerto that was written for Mike Davis and I when we were there.
That's awesome.
So amazing people. The music is incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sure they appreciate that to no end. They get some instruments
Well, that's nothing compared to what they paid us.
Yeah.
I mean, when I take students there, when I take other people there, I'm going, look, I don't know when it's going to happen. It could happen in the first hour you're here. Mm-hmm. It could happen in the first couple of days. But you're going to hear something that is going to change your definition of music. Mm-hmm. What you thought music was before. Yeah. That will get stretched when you're in Cuba.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. Speaking of instruments, I always make a point of, this one is a no-brainer since we're both with Shires, but tell us a little bit about what you're playing these days, instrument-wise. I don't know, Chris, if they can see that over there or not, but Mark's assortment of trombones are over there.
Yeah. I, of course, we've been doubling ever, from the get-go, but I was primarily playing bass trombone in the formative years for me, and but when I started teaching, one of my things was I was in Don Knob's last recruiting class at Eastman.
Right, okay.
And Mr. Knob, God love him, he was wonderful, but he taught everybody on the bass trombone. And I remember, even as a freshman, noticing that, some people, that was a little bit tricky, because they'd hear Mr. Knob's sound and they would react to that even if they were playing tenor trombone. And so I kind of, at that point, almost decided that I wanted to make sure that whatever we were playing, whatever I was teaching at any given moment, I wanted it to be what they were playing. So that if we're working with a screwdriver, then I want to have a screwdriver in my hand and not a hammer in my hand, right? So that ties into the idea that switching around all day. When I first got the job at Penn State, I had a collection of horns that were awesome. But about 2 years into teaching here, playing tuba and euphonium and different trombones, I got to where I felt like I could hardly play any of them. So, and then I realized that what I really liked was having a small bore horn, a tenor trombone, and a bass trombone that were sort of the same brand. It's like you can have a Suburban and a Honda Civic and a Subaru mid-sized car, and they all do different functions, but they also just the feel of them feels totally different. Whereas if you have a Honda Odyssey, a Honda Accord, and a Honda Civic, they all do sort of different things, but they feel the same when you get in the car.
Right.
Steve blessed me with, as he has so many trombone players, but Steve blessed me with 3 horns that are, I don't even have to think about when I go from one to the other.
Of course,
I'll like Steve Shires.
Just so everybody knows, we're talking about the great Steve Shires. Yeah.
Steve Shires. Steve blessed me with 3 trombones that feel so similar that all I have to worry about is the air. And I don't know if with what you think about with doubling, but so many people get to thinking about the mouthpieces or the chops or whatever, and for me it's all about the air, switching from one instrument to the other.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's great, and I share the same love for Steve Shires as I think you do. It's just such a pleasure to work with him and
really
what
is.
he's created. And,
Now on the bass trombone, when we were in school, the bass trombone, I started in 1976 in college. Man, that was at the heyday of the bass trombone changing. Just everything was changing. The valves were changing. Everything was changing, and so. I thought about it, and I was committed to the idea of a diatonic. I'm getting in geek land here, but the tuning of the instrument. I was if I was going to play an independent bass trombone, I wanted it to be diatonic. So I liked the idea of B flat, G, F, and E flat, and the way it spread the notes out across the instrument. And so I've always kind of done that. I was maybe one of the ones that did that more in the beginning.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's just been a great ride with these horns, and I'll probably play them till I'm done.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. Well, let's do another shift in gears here and talk about, you mentioned your family, and I've known your lovely wife almost as long as I've known you. But tell us, where's the Lusk family at these days? I know you've got grandkids now, and
Sure. Well, I mean, you know as well as anybody, I don't teach a lesson. I don't play a note. I don't conduct a note. I don't do anything that's not directly connected to Patrice and my love for her. And I think at the end of the day, that's what music is, right? It's all about expression. It's all about human expression, and this human here, you can't really take apart from her and from our family. They're an inspiration to me. There's 7 unique people who have their own drive and their own ambition, and good people and happy. So I mean, that's the best you can hope for, I think.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
So at the end of the day, I feel like I've had 2 families, really. There's those folks, but then you can't get around the family I've had here. I've graduated over 170 music, trombone music people in my time here.
There's a lot.
And it's just been so amazing to see the things that they do. And the way my family accepted this other family in my life has been a real blessing. They could have just, sometimes that can be a bit of an issue, but for me, everybody's been pretty cool so far.
That's awesome. I remember the last time I was here, which is probably 7-8 years ago now, maybe more. You had everybody over, and your kids, a few of your kids were there, and Patrice, of course, and the trombone department, and it was just like one giant happy family.
Yeah,
it was really good feeling. Really cool.
Yeah, I think so. Of course, you went to my hometown, and because I know watching a lot of these interviews of late, I'm a little bit different in that I started very, very late. And my high school band director just passed away a few years ago, or a few months ago, and Mr. Davis was just he was like the music man. You've been to my hometown. I mean, it's like
Brandenburg, Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean, he came to town and it was like, whoa, who is that? It's like, well, who is that? What's he doing? And it was just truly, I was a ball player, and so to just jumping on that and so I feel very lucky to have made it, and to hear, to get to Eastman and be with that incredible group of people that we had at Eastman. Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. Mark, as we wind down a little bit, just a couple more topics I wanted to ask you about. First, what's the future looking like for yourself? I know you're talking about playing next week at University of Richmond, right. But also for the plans here for Penn State as you guys carry towards your fifth decade of being here.
Right. Well, it's I'm, as you see, with Froeling Pozanen, and I was inspired when I went to Eastman to hear the stories of Emory Remington and all the teachers. There were some teachers that were still there when I showed up.
Yeah.
These 50-year folks. I've always been inspired by that kind of longevity and that kind of tradition, I guess. I feel like we have a bit of a tradition here.
Sure. Yeah.
It's really all about attitude. Do you feel like Eastman as a place?
Is this a trick question?
Yeah, I don't think Eastman's a place. Okay. I think Eastman's an attitude.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
So I never really feel like, I try to feel like I never really left Eastman.
Yeah.
I try to create that same kind of thing here. I remember, of course, Bill's here, and you see that picture of like the Remington, remember the record?
Sure.
And had the picture of the choir there, and just the, that kind of camaraderie and that kind of, that was an attitude that you came into. It didn't really matter whether it was in Rochester or not, really. And so, I feel like that's what I try to perpetuate, is those kind of attitudes and those sorts of things where we're trying to do the right things. And so I think that's, if I can just keep the tradition going, that would be great. In regards to, you asked about Penn State, and then you asked about what do I see? What was the second part of that?
Just where you're taking the studio and going forward, but you kind of answered it. I mean, you keep not to overly be generalized too much, but keep doing what you're doing. Obviously, it's working incredibly well.
just keep trying to put the music first. I'm a big believer in that. If you put the music first, good things will happen. When things start to get weird, it's probably because we haven't kept music in the right perspective at that particular moment. And so yeah.
Cool. Well, last thing, I always kind of end with this, and you've given us a lot of great advice in this interview, and you give your students great advice on a regular basis. But for a young person sitting out there who might watch our interview here today, what advice do you have for that person who might be interested in getting into Penn State or getting into Eastman or any along those lines, and then thinking about a career in music?
Well, there's always the things that stand out. I'm a big believer that versatility creates longevity in this business. I mean, you think about our group that we grew up with, and how versatile everyone was. There's no way to get around that, you know. So I mean, I think you have to, look for that versatility. Great music is great music, no matter what kind of music it is. You just got to figure out what it is that is really making it happen. And another thing I think that's of critical importance, I think, is that you can't expect your music to mean something to somebody if it doesn't mean anything to you. So I think whatever song you're singing, whatever piece you're playing, whatever dance you're dancing, it's something that you really kind of need to try to believe in, because that's what people will react to. When it means something to you, it'll mean something to them.
Yeah. Well,
so, and the world needs a lot of that these days, I think.
Yeah.
It needs us saying something. So.
Awesome. Mark, awesome. Really enjoyed it. Our
Awesome.
time,
Thank
and
you.
looking forward to the rest of today and all of tomorrow.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll be able to pepper this interview with a lot of pictures and things from this weekend.
We'll make it, we'll make that work. And for all of you, I hope if you're in Penn State sometime, try to make it by Fruhling Posaunen, which always happens on Palm Sunday. So we'll look forward to tomorrow and years to come with that, and the great work that Mark Lusk is doing here at Penn State. So really enjoyed our time today with Mark, and I hope you guys did too. We'll see you next time on Bone2Pick.